Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Right, so we're going to be carrying on with our top 10 champion lists per class. Now, I did rank Mystic class as the fourth strongest class or third weakest class, whichever way you want to look at it right now. I ranked Science, Skill, and Mutant ahead of them right now. And the drop in rankings by one spot was not necessarily because anything bad happened with them. It's just the fact that nothing good did. Not a single relevant champion came out since the start of this year, and that, in my opinion, right now also includes Purgatory, because MCOC definitely was a dud. They didn't have like pretty much any champions buffed except Ebony Maw, which turned out to be a complete noodle, and every other class has had some positive things, whether that is more overhauls or more new decent champions come out. Not so much with Mystic class. That being said, also, this is the first list where if a champion is not available as a 6-star, it automatically is disqualified. So Scarlet Witch, Ghost Rider, Magic, none of them can be counted in this list, because obviously Magic would definitely make it in top 10. And last point, obviously keep in mind that this is my opinion only. Whenever it comes to actually ranking up champions, you should always do target and goal oriented ranking, as in rank up the champion that is going to help you achieve whatever you are trying to do next in the contest, rather than based on some arbitrary number I or any other person gives to those champions. Whether that be tier, whether that be a number on this list, it does not matter. What matters is you, your account, what you want to do in the game, your gaming habits, so on and so forth. That all being said, I'm going to start with a couple of mentions here. Mention number one is going to be Mephisto. Now, Mephisto is still somehow maintaining his relevance, largely, well, partially due to hazard shift lanes, but in general, he has gotten some cool synergies, and perhaps synergy with Purgatory is going to make him even more viable for a ton of stuff, because that will increase his ability accuracy and make him bleed immune. So Mephisto is going to be able to be bleed, cold snap, poison, and incinerate immune, kind of, and that is a very, very solid kit right there. Now, Mephisto is one of those champions that has to be ranked appropriately for the content, and if you're going to put a leap of faith in him, you kind of have to get him up as high as possible. He's never going to be the greatest champion for super long form content, as in like Grandmaster's Gauntlet, Abyss of Legends, or Labyrinth of Legends, but he can definitely put in a lot of work in many different questing scenarios, including Alliance War and Alliance Quest. Another champion that I want to make technically marks available as 6-star, but I don't even know if he is actually available as 6-star, which is Dr. Voodoo. If I would be 100% sure about Dr. Voodoo, I would have put him on spot number 10. Keep that in mind. But I am quite convinced that either he has been available as 6-star maybe once in some special bundle or something, because I don't think he is in the basic crystal pool at all. And the last champion I want to shout, as always, is Man-Thing, because Man-Thing's freaking awesome. It's very, very fun. One of the most fun champions in the game if you are running 5 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion, because you can just infinitely throw special ones and heavies and just stack poisons and armor breaks. And he might not be the best. I think he would benefit from a bit of love from Kabam. But when it comes to the actual playstyle and enjoyment of the champion, they definitely did nail it there. Right, those champions put aside, we're going to start with spot number 10. And spot number 10 is going to be a champion that's not necessarily my personal cup of tea, and that is Sasquatch. Now, I know a lot of people really do like Sasquatch, and he was quite hype when he did come out. But realistically, aside from destroying people in Grandmaster's Gauntlet and forcing them to quit out with that lifecycle node and that regen that he has, aside from being potentially decent Alliance War defender due to his massive health pool and regen, he really hasn't done much. I mean, obviously there's always somebody who uses a champion for something. There are people who bring Kamal Khan to Alliance War, for example. It doesn't mean that Kamal Khan is a good Alliance War champion. If you do well with Kamal Khan in Alliance War, that probably means that you are a good player, much more than Kamal Khan is a great champion. And for these ranking videos, I mainly go over actual meta relevance, actual presence of these champions in top most competitive content, and I combine that with my own perception of the game, and I completely discard all of these anecdotal evidences as such. That being said, I just haven't seen too much from Sasquatch. The damage can be there, definitely. My personal gripe with Sasquatch is that for a Mystic champion, there's very little Mystic in it. He only has like staggers on his heavy attacks, and that is just about it. And when it comes to delivering damage, well, there are better options. So why bring him? And I think that is kind of reflected pretty much everywhere, where you don't really see the guy being used too much by too many people. Therefore, Sasquatch is a champion that is just waiting to be kicked off this list. But for now, let's give him a spot number 10. Let's move on to spot number 9. And spot number 9 is going to piss off some people, but it's Longshot. I'm sorry, I just don't value the champion. He's fun, he's flashy, he's pretty charming, he can put up great numbers. But when it comes to Mystic Champion being a Mystic Champion, there are a plethora of better options for nearly every single scenario. Only thing that he does better than anybody else in Mystic class is he does more sparkly damage numbers, but he does it in less fights. As a good example here would be, compare him to a Morningstar. Morningstar also has mega level 2 damage cheese with Mystic Dispersion. Morningstar's cheese works in more situations because it even works against opponents who are immune to Nullify or Fate Seal, because they only have to have the buff active in order to do damage, not to be able to nullify. Let alone, you don't care whether opponents are Incinerate immune or not. And then on top of all of that, Morningstar has still ability to gain souls and become a tanky questing champion herself. Morningstar still has that bleed immunity. Morningstar still has that heal region available to her, and access to buffs and unstoppable and power gain and copying opponents' furies and region. And in general, Morningstar just has a crap ton of more abilities that Longshot has. So whichever fight you can use Longshot for, you can also use Morningstar. And then 50 fights more in favor of Morningstar. Now, when I look at Morningstar, and I have a rank 5 5-star, and I have brought him and I have used him, and he's fun. He's fun every single time I use him. I like it. But the problem is that, yeah, he's situational. He's kind of like a sports roadster car for middle-age crisis men. It's definitely not what you need the most, but you're gonna enjoy what you have. Now, obviously, there are plenty of upsides to Longshot, as in like his immunity to ability accuracy reduction, the fact that the damage is passive, the prolonged Fate Seal. There are decent things about him. It's just that when push comes to shove, more often than not, there is something holding Morningstar back. And then there are other champions who do whatever he does and much more. So I do like the champion. He's very, very fun ranker. And he can get the job done in plenty of fights. But other than that, he's not really the wisest investment of catalysts, in my personal opinion, when it comes to the top of this class. Right, moving on from Longshot, we're going to put in Sim Supreme, and this might be slightly biased ranking, because I have never been the biggest fan of Symbiote Supreme, but he always kind of managed to sneak his way up to the top of the class. There was a time when people thought that he's the best Mystic in the game. I always preferred Magic over him, but still, there was an argument to be made for that. But as the time goes by, he kind of has drifted away for majority of the people. I think it's largely due to how his power gain mechanic works. And yeah, he's a Mystic champion, so you kind of rely on opponents having a lot of buffs, and a lot of your damage comes through bleed. You can deal with bleed immune champions as well, so long as they do have a lot of buffs. But overall, again, more often than not, people just choose other options. I do still think he has a ton of value, especially if you are going through Act 6. I think Act 6 was kind of like the peak of powers for this guy. I think this guy was as good as he is ever going to be when it comes to exploring Act 6. There are other interesting things, like he's a symbiote, so you can bring him in the Mystic / Symbiote variant and gain bonuses in 2 of the chapters. And he can put work. He's one of the best champion counters, and he's still a great option for, let's say, easy path of Abyss. And he's a very solid champion. But I do feel that pretty much all the champions above him on this list, or at the very least, most of the champions above him in this list, are used more often, are relied upon more often, and are also kind of like more user-friendly. So Symbiote Supreme, I'm not gonna say much bad things about him, just not quite my cup of tea. But on top of that, I do kind of feel that his best days may be over. But if you love him, that's great, and good for you. And I hope he puts in a ton of work for you. Right, after Symbiote Supreme, and this is perhaps one of the higher promotions on the list, and forever I refuse to rank Morningstar highly, because I absolutely hate her ramp-up mechanic. She has one of the worst ramp-ups in game, alongside Venom the Duck, alongside Strife. It's bad, it really is bad. If you need to drop like 4 level 3s in 4 different matches to ramp her up, for me, it's a deal breaker. I like her abilities, but not enough to ramp her up pretty much anywhere outside of incursions or maybe some very, very special quest once in a millennium. That doesn't mean that I can't appreciate everything she does and how versatile she is. She is a champion that can be good in pretty much every game mode. People are even managing to squeeze her in Alliance War teams in order to take down some bosses like Apocalypse. She is a decent, good Apocalypse counter. Then on top of all of that, obviously she is pretty much the incursion queen. Haven't seen her too much in Alliance Quest, but if you put your effort to it, I assume you could actually get it done as well. And there are a lot of people who absolutely love her. The thing that lets me place Morningstar as high as I'm placing her right now is more so that there are plenty of instances where you don't even have to ramp her up in order to benefit from it, and we saw that in 7.1 and to a degree in 7.2 as well. If there is any matchup with a ton of buffs, then you don't need to bother ranking up Morningstar. Just take her in, drop a heavy attack, get that power gain buff. If possible, copy some opponent's power gain buff, get to level 2 quickly and drop the level 2. Opponent's dead. If they're not dead, you probably nullify the chunk of buffs and you can go for some more special attacks. And that is why she's so superior than, let's say, Longshot. Because that level 2 gimmick, where you deal with a ton of buffs and deal a crap ton of damage, is just an added extra. It's just an added benefit. Yes, her base damage output capabilities unramped are significantly worse. However, once you ramp her up, her base damage, sturdiness, and heal ability obviously way outweigh that. But yes, I'm gonna put Morningstar in spot number 7, even though, for me, that ramp up process is a complete deal breaker in like 95% of the scenarios. She's a champion that I have. She was my one of first 6-star duped Mystic champions, and by all intents and purposes, I should have ranked her up. There was no good reason for me not to rank her up, but I just can't bring myself to do it because I know for a fact I never want to ramp her up if I can go by without it. But there we go, Morningstar, spot number 7. Spot number 6 is going to be Mojo. Mojo is a champion that is grossly underestimated by his offensive potential, and once you do get your first couple of fights going, he's actually a questing machine, which is one of the better and things, well, one of the more lacking things in Mystic class. But there aren't too many great champions that can just deal a lot of damage off the cuff. But Mojo, when he's ramped up, he definitely is one of them, because you're going to be starting to place buffs on opponent immediately and having them expire, just triggering Mystic Dispersion, getting to level 2 with like a combo or 2, and dropping the level 2 and finishing the fight. He's one of the faster Mystic champions in moderate length fights for sure. On top of that, the fact that he delivers his damage due to passive degeneration is very handy. He has access to Unstoppable Y Synergy if need be, thus covering that point, and he can regenerate. And overall, I'm not ranking him up there. I took him up to rank 3 largely because of Alliance War defense. But he was one of those rank ups where I didn't hesitate to nominate myself for. That's how our alliance kind of works. We get given a list of champions that our officers would like to have available at rank 3 and they don't. And we kind of volunteer which champions we are able or willing to rank up. It's never a forced thing, it's always voluntary. But people always kind of like, get most of the stuff ranked up anyways. And Mojo was one of my first picks alongside Hulkbuster for a couple seasons ago. And the reason for that was because I do genuinely believe that he is that good. I definitely value him much, much more than I do with, for instance, Longshot or Sasquatch. just because he can fulfill most of the Mystic roles. His base Nullify isn't as good as it should be. His level 1 should be able to nullify a few more buffs than just the one, because when it comes to dealing with permanent buffs, there are definitely better options. But as long as the buffs can expire and as long as they are timed, he is second to none, because he can just get rid of all of them very quickly. And then on top of that, he has access to a ton of passive damage, very good base damage once he has his Fury active. And I think more people should give him a go in more different scenarios, and you will be pleasantly surprised. Some people hold his squishiness against him, but he does have a massive health pool, and his regeneration gets more potent the lower your health goes. And in more often than not, I find myself hanging around that 30 to 60% health bar mark, because once you drop lower, your regen gets more and more potent. In general, I definitely do recommend people check out Mojo and pay him some more attention. And on top of that, obviously ranking up Mojo, you get a very versatile offensive and defensive rank up. That being said, let's move on to spot number 5, and spot number 5 is Dragon Man. Now, Dragon Man is a fairly unique Mystic champion that he's atypical in a sense that he, again, doesn't really nullify anything. My 6-star is rank 2 currently, and duped very potentially can go up to rank 3. The way Dragon Man deals with buffs is rather than nullifying them, he kind of counters those effects. Now, all that being said, he's obviously a Mystic champion that doesn't necessarily benefit from Mystic Dispersion much, but that actually kind of fits perfectly to why I like and value Dragon Man so much. Now, when it goes to evaluating classes, Mystic class is by far the most suicide unfriendly class when it comes to the grand scheme of things. There are only a couple or a handful of champions that can run Liquid Courage and Double Edge efficiently, and Dragon Man's one of them. Now, even though he obviously does rely on special spamming in some situations, and you do take recall damage, he is a double immune champion. Therefore, by that, you do not have any health loss at the start of any given fight. On top of that, in many of the serious fights, you actually end up dropping level 3s with Dragon Man much more than anything, in order to gain that unstoppable and in order to gain that pretty much immortal healing mode, which is so valuable. Now, in general, Dragon Man's kit is decent. He has access to Fury, and being as a poison immune champion, he can bypass Caustic Temper, which is always a quite big plus. He has access to plenty of Incinerates, therefore stuff like Incinerate Vulnerability or Pleasure to Burn is perfectly doable with him. Same as stuff like Distract, for instance, which is not like that common for plenty of Mystic champions. And on top of all of that, he has a very potent power gain mechanic. He has access to slow, very good access to unstoppable. I think he's a really good champion, and slowly but surely people are starting to realize that. I personally have increased my appreciation for this champion over the last half a year for sure. And part of that comes from the fact that if I am running Liquid Courage Double Edge, it's quite tricky to find Mystic champions that you really want to bring with you, because a lot of them rely on special spamming and they're not really recoil friendly. But with Dragon Man, you can definitely get through the quest whether you run recoil or not. And I do think that he's kind of, roundabout way what Mystic class needed, alongside the next champion on this list. And the next champion on this list is Tigra. Now, Tigra is a champion that I personally need to put in more work in. I have been lazy. Well, I don't know if I have been lazy, but I have been preoccupied with different things. That being said, she is worth learning. I have made up my mind. I definitely know that she is worth learning. And even right now, I do believe that in Grandmaster's Gauntlet, she is one of the better options for T-Rex, for instance. And she's a champion that I still don't always necessarily keep in my mind as a potential option for a fight. And then 2 days later, somebody uploads a fight with Tigra where they just shred some tricky fight. And that's quite often the case. She can do the fights that many people don't realize she can. And those are hard fights. Those are tricky fights. I'm not talking about some vanilla path in Act 7, whatever. We're talking about boss fights. We're talking about difficult lines for bosses and Grandmasters, T-Rex, and stuff like that, for example. And I can always respect that. I think this Grandmaster's Gauntlet just reminded everybody how much better Quake is than anything and everything in the game. And Grandmaster Gauntlet lets champions like Tigra excel and throw their hat in the ring for top meta options. Because when you go through all of your roster and you struggle to find options at all, and maybe you think you don't have any, and then you can see that Tigra is an option that definitely brings up her stock quite a bit. On top of that, I already mentioned that Mystic class doesn't really have many, if any, great questing champions. Mystic class doesn't have Corvus, Omega, Cosmic Ghost Rider, Ghost, or Nick Fury, where you can just bring them in the quest and steamroll through, where you can access a lot of damage from get-go. And Tigra is about as good as it gets. Now, Tigra still needs a bit of setup, a bit of ramp up, but she's able to deliver a lot of damage very quickly in a ton of different matchups, even if you do not have like some buff cheese available. So that is another benefit of Tigra, because she kind of fulfills a weak aspect of Mystic class, which is very valuable, and people should want to have access to that, especially the more specific the game becomes. Like in Act 7.2, we saw that the entire build around it is to reward you for your knowledge and for your roster in this game by being able to bring in Mystic champions that qualify for the requirements that they have set for you. And all that being said, I'm going to leave Tiger up at 4th for now, and I definitely need to start actually playing with her more. Now, top 3 still hasn't really changed. I'm going to go with top 3 spot, Sorcerer Supreme. Sorcerer Supreme can potentially compete with Black Widow Clairvoyant, and also I thought previously, I do really like the champion a lot, and if you are not running Liquid Courage Double Edge ever, you might want to prefer Sorcerer Supreme or Black Widow Clairvoyant. However, for me, that kind of relegates her to the 3rd place, because I do run those masteries fairly frequently, and she's not really all that great without Mystic Dispersion and with those masteries active. In fact, even Dr. Doom handles lack of Mystic Dispersion better than Sorcerer Supreme does. Now, I absolutely love the character. I think she's fantastic if you have Mystic Dispersion, if you have no recoil active. But in general, she's capable of doing a ton of things. Another champion that I definitely want to take to rank 3 in very near future. Now, Black Widow Clairvoyant, as always, number 2. And she has well more than proved her worth to me, especially in recent piece of content where I have relied on her a ton, and she has put in a ton of work for me. And the access to plenty of debuffs, the immunities, varied kits of utility, is working for her. There's just not too much to talk about there. There's no need to elaborate much more. The access to immunities, the access to heal, power steals, extra damage, ability to utilize stuff like bleed vulnerability, poison vulnerability, and incinerate vulnerability, and corresponding nodes that require you to have those debuffs on the opponent. And yeah, I think she's one of the more versatile and most needed mystics. Huge respect to Black Widow Clairvoyant, but Doctor Doom's Doctor Doom. I do think Doctor Doom is broken. I do think Doctor Doom's broken. I do think he's one of 5 best champions in the game overall. I do think part of the reason why he's so dang good is because he has crazy good stats. His base stats are insane. To begin with, he has a ton of armor, his ton of block penetration, his critical resistance. Opponents hardly crit against him, and he's just so dang tanky. It's close to impossible to die with a boosted 6-star rank 3 Doom in Alliance War. And then, obviously, on top of all of that, he controls the fights incredibly well, and there is a reason why he's one of the most sought-after champions. If we are being 100% real, he might have the, I don't know, fullest package, in a sense that he's great prestige, he is great on defense, he's great on offense, he's great for pretty much every single game mode or challenge that we have seen. And if you need a Mystic champion, chances are by default you're gonna go, okay, here's my Doom, let's go. And you're not gonna think too much about it, because he can really pretty much do all the things that you want Mystic to do. He can power drain, he can power drain, he can prevent opponents from getting power. His special attacks, he has unblockable special attacks, he can nullify, he can stagger, and he can control fights extremely well. Benefits well from Mystic Dispersion. Super tanky. I don't think we're ever, or at least for a very long time, going to see better Mystic than this guy. because it would be really hard to come up with one. That being said, that is it for my Mystic video. So the next video, we're going to be going in our top 3 classes, starting with Science, then it's going to be Skill, and then it's going to be Mutant. Do not miss those videos, and hopefully you did enjoy this one. And if you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons. I'll catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about